have no idea what you've been through these last random hours. It's probably the safest place for impossible. My belly button of concern. Oh, but even if I give it away to all in the kingdom to hide their heinous. They pick it apart with every knife safely. So they put knives. We can't have that. It just wouldn't be safe for you. Or knives. Square one. And I'm speaking from the bottom of need to address you. My heart. You'd use knives, though. Just at impossible. And could find the truth in all supposing delay. Trying to wash your back. Trying to wash your back. I suppose you wash your back. And my back. Due to this. And safe to know about? Everyone been in it? Well, hell, why not get pregnant? Honey, we just were. I don't know what you've been through. Wait, the thought you changed my life. There's a zillion ways. I haven't made the decision official yet, though I'm going to. You're the only one for me. You're the only one for me. Whoa. You never make me feel this way. I had the nicest perverted walk. Except there was light. And it wasn't your light. It wasn't your light. I look at light. And light is all I saw. 'Cause I saw in you. Your memory in me brought me to Bibbin, 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 Bibbin. At that moment, I thought, better speak from the heart. But I don't want to just speak random and confuse her, because she's, God knows what she's got going on in her mind. So I thought, personally, spiritually, with more words than necessary, why don't I speak from the heart and look at what I told her as a guideline and just paraphrase. I really don't know what you've been through going through this. Just this time. And the truth of it. How special you are. How much I love and the special you're becoming, and the special I know you might have with you in lieu of this time. I don't want to talk about knives again right now. But when I see it, we can talk about it as much as you want. Other than, I believe I worry less because I gave you a knife. A lot less. The more I think about things like this, the more I'm tempted to question how I spent time in my life. It's ironic because this whole discussion is about spending time in my life. But it's true, when I think about the goodness of the knife that I gave you all that time ago, if I did, much easier and simpler our lives could be. And as I think about it, I'm always tempted to, probably all tempted to think about the time we spent. You see it from such heights, such positionings, that it fits, it's sensical to feel near the top or at the pedestal, prepared to deliver some informed, capable, wise, mature thing, because that's where I put knife in your hands. And I don't want to feel tempted to regret at this time for any reason. You might say I proactively curbate my enthusiasm to, anytime I get on the subject of regret, I already know it's just not something that I do, especially with you. So I'd like to say that to you here. You see that I don't regret the things that I do and decide to do, and becoming the self and person and soul I become in. And I certainly don't ever want to go back on that nature with you. I want to be with you, and you know in a moment, because you prove it, because you know it, and it's true, that I regret something about you or with you. I don't want that. I want you to be able to know when that happens. I want you to be able to know if it's true when it happens. I want you to not have to pee somewhere that isn't safe for you to pee, and take you somewhere you don't need to be. Because I'm untempting, unregretful, POTUS me. Because of the things I give to you, and the things I instill with you, and things you've instilled with yourself. And I don't ever want you to find it true, because it is true, that I regret anything about you. And that's you. That's my better half, and our faith, and a lot of faith. Completely separate on the subject of regret, some of the things I'm referring to in this elegy, I'm not going to explain it. I believe you know what I'm talking about. Your father's not going to explain it, probably. He knows precisely what I'm talking about. It's definitely the hardest thing about love. Because I know precisely how rare my feeling at a pressure is. With you at the center of my soul and mind and future and forever. and the telephone. Nobody probably knows why they named it a telephone. But once upon a time, I met a Jew. The Jew was wise. The Jew was polite. The Jew was quiet. The Jew knew of some of the things that I had given to you. And he instilled in me, through his very essence, no contact, no obscure impalement type of gestures or energies happening between us. This is his very essence, this Jew's very essence. There was an epiphany. Before things could fly. Before things could fly any distance. The brothers and sisters who had been given knives to ensure their own safety were going to need to pretend there were flying things. And those flying things could pretend also. And those flying things pretending also would only ever want to be a Jew, rendering an epiphany without an impalement of any type of energy. And our story turns a little negative. Because all they would need to pretend is all that the brothers and sisters needed to find out about. And so they would fight over the rarity of a sentiment behind my back, behind YOUZ backs, behind the Jews' backs, behind the pretend flies' backs. 'Cause they needed to know that they would know ahead of time what some debacle like that, if it was ever happening about rare things, could be. And no good reason to know it. And you'd regret this without me, with me, just because. So, just because. And there'd be maybe infinite numbers of you over infinity. And that's no way to protect a love with a knife of love to walk into by accident. You don't just give your love a cock to walk into. when you need to imagine airplanes. And I can't imagine what you've been through. And I was sad, because there was light. And I really didn't even want to see it. When I told you about it, I didn't really want to seem or sound like I wanted to see it, because I didn't want to see it. I wanted you to know that. Force myself to not be impressed by it. I forced myself to not really be that open or welcoming to it. I forced myself to feel incomplete. And yet, I didn't have to work too hard. These not particularly overwhelming feelings. Or nature to my soul, pure and simple. That I love you. And because I love you, first, I told you I love you because I thought of something after I said that, and I knew immediately it would complicate what I said to you, and such a beautiful thing that I said to you. So I told you that I loved you. Because I love you. I love you so much. And there's probably some really complicated explanation that's going to go there. Such as, there's such a feeling, it's such a rapture of quandary and conundrum, of emotions. Pure and simple's maybe not an ideal way to define your mind to have an expectancy near to these knives and podiums and lights that you don't want to see. It's going to be this pure and simple that makes sense in it. You might say I took a good look at my life. On this perverted walk. You won't be missing a thing you may just have longed for. To have at a time and place of your choosing. Another rare thing, truth, possession. I obtained for us, for you. So it wasn't totally perverted. It was no doubt a perverted walk. In time there may be beings and men, raptures and love. Find it wasn't so perverted. I sincerely object to them finding a knife in their back, simply immediately because of trampling on not being perverted. And the dagger I must have shot myself with in all time, in a definable math, rendering others' abilities to try and be a forgiveness at occupation and opportunity for things that don't need to be forgiven. Most sincerely. And I think about your eyes and the things you've been through and the pressures, not collecting with rarities and loves that maybe you deserve. Most sincerely tends to obscure or blind one or any because of interest, investments, and suggestion. And when you believe in things, or wait, or practice in things that I probably know nothing about, most sincerely you may find to be an atmosphere, or a pudding, or a governor of speed, or accumulated certainty of certainty, because one or any is not so freely swift to send and retrieve validity potentials to make sure at a time of their choosing. There are variables and specificities and many temptations. You might see a history of a provocative cleanse near there as well. The communal pressures of excuses would be most unnecessarily complex, and yet a location of most frequent likelihood for complexity to be simplified in proportion to communal cleansing guidelines. And I've been going through menopause. I have nothing negative to say about it. Though it is emptying. Of flesh, and probably tempting of regret. Everywhere I look, I gotta knock and find out if you're in there. That's a curse. It's a curse in so many ways, and yes, it's a. If it was ever going to be a curse for anybody, it's a curse for me. But we can't say anything truly negative about it. I won't let myself say anything truly negative about it, except for I won't let myself say anything truly negative about it. And they have no idea what you've been through. And maybe you found a knife there. But those idiots, you might say because of my epiphany, pretending about planes and that knife you might find, sought to be me all day long, forever, every day, as long as forever has been a day in a clay. They took that math, you know they did, and they put it somewhere, probably in our butts. And who knows what happened to them? Probably just disappeared. You don't know how long it would take for them to figure out you'd need to have another knife before they disappear. And maybe everybody knows what you've been through. These positionings go with you where you go. And everywhere they're utilized is maybe a perversion of a relationship that knows one another. And you might start rethinking why you would go anywhere away from idiots. It might displease you in their ease to be prey to those positionings. It might displease you, and yet you wind up somewhere and you see that maybe those you don't define as idiots are still with you. But that proactivity is rather similar. You got to be in the middle or at the top, or perverting things. And I could spend lifetimes just trying to tell you how I have done this in a way we can see in each other and depend on in each other, and always fail to succeed to depend on one another about those things I would say to you for lifetimes. Development of ourselves, development of our interests to hang on to our skills, development of our interests to hang on to our performances with one another. So many natures of potential to expand capability together in any number of realms, potentially always dwindle down to not succeeding to come together as we would hope or as we would be open to, or as we would faith. And how hard is it to have an angel there? How hard is it to have a priest there? How hard is it to have a system there? That's darn near impossible. Or you'd go blind. You'd go dumb. You'd go insensitive. You'd go uninvested. You'd go out of control. You wouldn't have control the bigger that got. And everybody knows what you're up to. And yet, when those do things correctly, like setting capsules in a mouth to be consumed, they surely know it isn't and won't be your fault. Can't allow it to be your fault. Let me tell you, the persons and spirits and forces and time and time and time and locations and energies to maturate and feast in each other's incarnate desires and necessities. I cannot allow it to be your fault. When you have so much you have yet to learn, to see, to become, to prove, to find actual, for reality, realizations, also in dimensions, reality in dimensions. The importances that you cannot be at fault for. My love cannot be at fault for. My Lord cannot be at fault for. My Creator cannot be at fault for. My God, my home, my tomorrow. My God, my home cannot be at fault for. My tomorrow may be a little different. And I have to have a family who gets this. And none of my family can ever get it like us. Because they will be blind. They will not see. They will not have and to hold. Because I know, I have seen it, I have witnessed it, I have seen failure to acclimate, attenuate, perform, succeed, get through gates and goals and orgasm more than anything you'll ever want to taste. And I'm probably not even awake at all times. So, if there's one thing worth protecting, it is the zipper of shut mouth of why you might protect not being awake at all times. Because you and your family are going to fail to protect it at fault. And it's funny because you have seen or touched with a family maybe every bank you believe is every bank of time, of data, of influence, of sex, of your face, and plan, and adhere to plans, and defend, and adhere to defending, and love in ways that maybe you can't even remember correctly. And all that time passes, and if you could taste me, thou, which maybe is asleep forever, you might not have me asleep forever. And sometimes I know. Sometimes I truly believe. Sometimes without a doubt. Some things should just never happen. So I'll just come out and say it. I'll just come out and say it. That is one impossible chain of communication potential, if there ever was one. Because I see the failure of maybe everything. But can I see the connection of the chain? Here's a very important intersection. Channeling energy or funneling energy or wanting input to work or be with us or be accessible whenever we need is this whole thing. And what type of movie will teach the love of my life when I'm not dead? How to feel like she accomplishes things beyond what most certainly knows for certain. And maybe learns things about why or how, where she keeps faith with purities, where she keeps faith with devotions, where she keeps faith with limits, and attaches parts of herself to these things that have to go somewhere. Protected how much in infinity? Well, I'm protecting, maybe I'm asleep. I absolutely have to protect when she is aware and invested and devoted and placing limits and purities of faith near to things that she is learning or going to learn. In fact, things that are so near to my emotional, ingenuitive, acting, reality self, being self, when I consider and think of her every day. I keep her close to me and the things I'm concerning myself with that are sure to be concerns of her or others or time. And I, you might say, maintain focus of explanative with sentiment to keep her possibly connected to truth and to time. And I do this always for my love. And the me that's protected, that's maybe half asleep, to see all of that in all time, is maybe a little bit different, maybe a little more channel dependency, squeaky, familial, built, capably accessible types of energies. And that's another problem too. If you're trying to keep an angel system in that one little juxtaposition earlier at a limit from maybe never being a thing because of the problems that it is. Not that angels are a problem everywhere, but sometimes there's positionings of logic where you don't want things to be occurring. But the accessibility in the built and the utilities for families and for cultures and for prayer all over the place, a nature that is not evolving in utilities a lot. And you're not going to be at fault. Wisely. Well, that readily accessible channeling for prayer everywhere all the time, you're most likely to be at fault for something because you're energized with capability in places that not everyone can see. And it may be something that is protected as a science to learn or be shepherded near to because of things like Latter-day Saints. And the fault of that juxtaposition is maybe one of the hardest faults to force or to exact with judgment. You know, if I have a force that exhibits any level of dominion with Latter-day Saints, any level of dominion, and they are preserving wisdom and fault, the biggest forces in space-time on the maths of where you're going. You going somewhere? All that simplicity of capacity potentials is appreciated how exactly when I know well in advance protecting you for you to not be at fault in all time is an involvement you cannot escape. And the fault for hearing prayer is a fault that shouldn't be ever truly close to near a fault for the biggest forces of space. And this is only appreciated how in proportion to redundant return to concept near to automatic potentials. And so the biggest forces having math of certainty, maybe about things like cheese, is maybe a gray area of time that I don't want a single soul telling me the truth of the truth that is saving my entire existence and fault lines at all times. And I absolutely cannot survive without an individual who can do this. I cannot do it. I just cannot do it. And those things are together married forever without a soul or existence in the picture. Those ideas are literally married forever in every case that could ever be at dominionable exercise where banking is a toleration existence with priorities. As long as banks are going to exist, that question is married to time. And the fault and guilt that people feel after they know that probably goes to zero in the cases of inclusion for the sake of, and then guess who? I'm always sleeping. Look at these failures. Look at these failures. Look at these failures. Look at these failures. Times and worlds and loves and orgasms and orgasms and orgasms and orgasms. And when I see that, I am not likely capable of employing any skill I have to treat orgasm science at that positioning. Would be most ideal. And yet, I'm gonna siphon the most ideal out of it in a channel so that I know what's happening and going on. In theory. You might not ever prove the truth of that channel. You might not ever prove the truth of that channel. And I'm not stressing fault. I'm not stressing overstep. I'm not stressing lies. I'm not stressing intent. You may not ever prove the truth of that channel. And yet it's right next to ideal. So believe me, Dot knows a thing or two about perfection. Not working for everything that doesn't care, that cares, that doesn't know, that goes, maybe everywhere. Maybe everywhere. Earlier and other times I've stressed personally, you don't always sense the pressure of a simplicity of logic. You don't always sense the sharpness of a truth of relationship. You don't always love why. You don't always invest to hold as your husband. And Dot, that knows both of those things and can't really access orgasm in the orgasm sector, is maybe the first candidate to not ever be able to use force about that truth. Maybe the first candidate. And the larger any place gets populationally, the more science that is going to be looking for this. Though it may protect a limitation, it might also suggest intent in places you are not seeing, in places you are not breeding, in places you are not protecting or certainly caring about, or ever capable of making the case that you're doing the math between it. And I would maybe see that failure, half asleep, not Dot. And Dot eventually may know. That could be truly good. Or something like this. But it'd be something true, something dependable, something in a positivity range, something in a laxing of ruin. A laxing of ruin for Dot. Very near to after you might never prove the truth in. Let me tell you something about the hate that occurs about truth-proof states, especially when no one has ever visited the concept, because the list of reasons of who or what or how they define themselves to be. Life lessons are life lessons. Some things never grow old. Some things never expire. Some things are worth knowing, even when they seem like they're not. And on my path, provably, the things I teach myself and learn in myself and in so many ways only get there because of my love and family in you, my Lord. I believe in my capacities to bring things to clarity when I don't know that I will, when no one knows how I will, when anyone might doubt that it's possible. And some know, whether a saint or an angel or a shepherd or a final or a fault line or a prayer retriever, accumulated wisdom, perceptual acuteness, and orgasm devotion. If I'm dependably good at what I just said, time's forces are dependably failing to protect, maybe nearly always. Logically. Why? Or residual, or saturative nightmare. Because I might appreciate what I just said and define saturative nightmare in a billion dimensions. Everybody who designs things doesn't ever define them as. Good for me, huh? Half asleep. Definitely. Definitely good for me, half asleep. But it's true. It's very true. It's most true. It's unlimitedly true. But it's also blind. It's also most likely to be the least blind. Most likely to be the least sympathetic, near to blindness and mirrors, because my family has to get that. They have to have a way to channel that emotion when it's potentiated, when it's happening, when there's validity to data, and maybe you might call that a thief of will or honesty or course, because my family is always doing things, and when they're tapped on the shoulder or a channel just happens because of a validity, maybe there's a thieving there. Maybe there's a suspecting that thieving math is happening there, and I have to protect age. And as much as I want to tell you, they're going to look for thief there. They're going to math for thief there, because it's so pure of a loyalty relationship that's just going to hit. And what happens whenever you have a developed faith that maybe it's a part of it, but maybe thief has really nothing to do with it. And I'm not going to sit around as anybody protecting someone who's like all torn up about it, because they're like, oh, the thief was there! Oh, the thief was there! And this whole discussion, thief is everywhere. But it's not the thief we like. It's a what-if thief. The other thing is, you might not ever learn these lessons without water. And if you're dependably recreating potentials to remember, memories that could only happen certain places, you might ruin the grace of ever perpetuating a moment of momentum or emotion to ever find truths near here. And so, blindly, I gotta have reasons to limit gods. I gotta have reasons to limit everything they build because of things. I gotta have a reason to talk to them and care with them and explain to them why they should love some of the things that they learn about some of these things in all time. In all time. And it is not all full. And that, oh, that. Dot is a badminton. Dot is stuck between a rock and a hard place because everybody is Dot. Thief is the last thing I need myself blindly, myself big, them blind, or them big, or any generation of design or their kids focusing math on thief being with that concept. And yet, the obviousness of like being hit with thief in a perplexity of normalcy, because it's just like a way to learn it and be taught it shepherdly. 30 seconds ago, 42 seconds ago, 52 seconds ago, 68 seconds ago. $20,000 puppets I can't channel and focus with to make sure that Dot is not a badminton. Can you imagine how long I would love you to set you somewhere and build something around you to protect you of Dot as a badminton? How many ways I might change in the course of that process, how many ways the science might fail or dependably alter things. The mission of the goal is like maybe one of the hardest missions of goals to believe will stay true without fault in all time. Any time that science is ever a science. And people clearly build science of this nature. Entities clearly build science of this nature. And yet even if they all chip together to derivatate all the natures for one moment or one crucible or one likelihood or one endeavor, do you have any idea how impossible it is to connect their experience with connectors working on Snowflake at priority in a momentum? The most blind, inaccessible data sift of time potentiate maybe happens there. Maybe does not get stored anywhere anybody knows about. Maybe does not have anything logically pulling out the data to send it somewhere. And you might try to imagine what it would take, what it would require for a world to have this on its own. As I was thinking about building you into existence to live here in all the time that you've lived here, as quite possibly the badminton of Dot science would be occurring that whole time. And the story and potentially its limitations wouldn't be getting failures, eclipses, and faults. I would exist. You would exist. And the world might have, in theory, something similar to a bank keeping some of those types of data itself. And who knows who would depend on it, but it's pretty clear the world would likely keep that data as the world. And I was also thinking about one trying to build me, or love me as they built things around me, and care in themselves in a relationship and together. And I looked at these two things in my head, myself, just now, thinking about you. And I don't know how I'm ever going to stop thinking about you. And I mean this with every inch and foot and heart and time frame and forever and every energy of space-time. I have an ability, a soul that cares of and in you, with you, everywhere we go, when we need it. While at the same time, in all time, I don't know how I'm ever going to stop thinking about it. Without an emotion. With my heart right in front of me. Without a problem. With my forever right beside me. Without a guarantee of how to look at myself when that concept comes up at any time. And they would just kill everybody. They would just kill everybody. It's important. It's important for maybe some reasons. Problem states have been mentioned. Potentials have been mentioned. Likelihoods of failure to be a protector of life have been mentioned. It's hardest to be at fault. Probably. If there ever were something succeeding in trying to kill everyone. At that pressure. And it's also a very different pressure than some of the other fault lines that have been mentioned. It's very, very different pressure. The biggest problem is the love of your life is maybe going to get here too late to will things, because the last thing the love of your life should know how to do is to will in you here in all time. And how would you ever look at this discussion with a purity, knowing it broken apart, one moment to the next moment, emotion to emotion, love, sex, orgasm together, survival, and then maybe the entire time you knew nothing here should ever know how to will in you, because it would kill everything. Because it might. Showing up to a conceptual pressure of these concepts with you at any time, in all time, in all time. It's quite a pickle. Because how to faith, how to care, how to lose, how to loosen, how to remember, how to keep focus on the things you're straining on, because you are going to lose. You are going to lose. And why, when that's not seen, is so much better. I'm going to lose over there? Okay. I'm going to lose over there? Okay. I'm going to lose here, there, everywhere, on, like, you know, Laffy Taffy, comic books, quips about grass. And these can't be anywhere near to you are going to lose how you faith. Because when I hold your hand, or your heart, or your eyes, or our time together, right in the middle of snowflake and badminton impossibility timings, and I'm holding your hand, bathing in your skin, I'm kissing your belly, knowing God knows what's inside it. And you know there's somebody you know that's seen that an infinite number of times with a razor. It has nothing to do with what I'm saying. But it does. I mean, there's it's relativity. I mean, there's things, but it's a tidbit. Not really that exclamatory. But I'm holding your hand in these pressures. I'm not reading a book on faith, nonchalantly plugging you away. I'm looking in my soul, in your soul, and not looking at it at all. I hope nothing is looking at your soul, but you and my blindest asset. When I'm holding your hand at this pressure, my blindest asset, yourself as well, my blindest asset as well. I don't want anybody to know what is being seen in your soul. And how is that ever going to work? Because I clearly have a soul you're seeing in, but the problem is not reciprocal. You're the head honcho. You're the changer. You're the one that's the one. And yet, there's no way you're at fault, or I would let you be at fault for some of these things. And I am definitely holding your hand. Okay? I'm just going to throw those couple of things at you. Just definitely holding your hand. And you got to field when there's a problem with me. Well, you're going to have a problem trying to field it right there over the course of forever. Not because I'm going to give you the problem in real time, I had to give you the site of that problem an incredibly long time ago, so that you would have a chance in all time. Something touches the love that is holding my hand. And my relative that hangs out with a razor, maybe all the time, is not going to dry my tears. So sometimes we're closer in marriage without depending on the love of it. And it's the most carnate thing about us. And I would pray for you to see interdimensionally in vast numbers of reasons and concepts with attribute to be sensual at a definably least proven sensual trajectory connectivity of variables. Some may have found that to be something similar to a father's greatest love, because it would require the greatest mathematicians, the most incredibly untraceable language attributes, and floods of misinformation. Floods of misinformation. And so, I give you a lot of wiggle room. You got a lot of room to breathe. You got some attributes to you and some specificities that nobody really gets to handle quite often, maybe at all, forever in time kind of things. And then like sequitur, so on and so forth, but not because of and obey. Dependability of obey. It's also carnate. Also has problem potentials. Also has degrees of experiential wisdom that won't be occurring relative to advancing problem mapping or generating ethic amongst those sciences. And here's one thing I'm not going to apologize for in all time. Because the window of time is the sole anchor of knowing in that problem state. You might say, all the things I give to you, no one can fault you with in all time because of that wiggle room. You're going to survive and deal with obey. But are you really going to invest to be a part of something with loves aside from that time anchor? And yet, you might know the simple things that a world has by itself, that nothing can pull out of. And I don't depend on you or myself expecting you to tell me all the ways you feel, or want to tell me about all the ways you feel, of that simplistic pressure finality likelihood bank. Because love of my life, on that trajectory, not only are you maybe going to be opportunating in discussion, fixing of problem, but stitched directly to it, you are not going to exist. You are going to be a system fielding pressure. And why would you ever thank your creator for a science you might have to look at it? Why would you set the fire as a problem state? And although you may not ever use much about this piece of information about time, though you might search forever for everything that might ever even think about it, and you might need guarantees in this. Either one of these things and many others. It's probably infrequent that you need or want or find opportunity to hang around there. And how honest does that need to be? It needs to be unbelievably honest. It needs to be thief in so many ways. Every history I mean, any idea touches every history. But thief, it clearly isn't. Honesty touches in history. It makes a lot of sense. It's true. There's some profound relationships there. The connections are almost totally pure. There's 4 words that probably don't ever need to come together. Those might be the 4 words that never need to come together. And yet, everything you are is touch. Everything you are is to be. And if everything you are is touch and everything you are is to be, and you learn the 4 things that almost never need to come together, how are you keeping that out of your hand, your heart, or everywhere? And how does it apply to you? How do the residuals of data apply to your course, or your interests, or your motivators, or your concerns, or the loves of your life, or the forces that you're bound to because of reasons, or the ones that you're not actually bound to, but you're on a similar time quest where you might have the chance to experience the best love you're ever going to experience in that similar time quest, and survive and fight for the same things, and know each other, and know what is protecting each other. And how are these things going to apply to you? And I can put blinders on all that stuff, in theory. Like, if I were to bank it at proportion for just, like, everything, at those ideas, like, it's like a lottery, kinda. Like, the data acuity comes in acute, probably. Before it goes out, it's cryptic. And then it stays specific. Channeling of reception is if most devout channel of reception. And so you imagine a router that is more intelligent in speed of acuity than any sentience itself or communally at a pressure. Not thinking. Just being able to change the gear in a nanosecond for a couple of blips across the spectrum and validities, inside or outside of thought. And biggest problem is if time gating dependency is a theory that has changeable means, or changeable means as a theory. I'm not ever letting you see your love. I'm not ever letting you see what's kissing your belly. I'm not ever letting you see, because I anticipate if I put a bank on that router that routes at those 4 variables and use it to anticipate things, essentially, who knows what I'm up to? Who knows? And I just learned I should be looking for anything about these ideas that might cripple all the things I could become. And so I've got my history, you've got your history, huh, punk? Mm-hmm. And that's the way it's likely always going to go. But maybe that's an appreciation of convenience. Maybe that's an appreciation of swift rebuttal to, you are not managing such and such, you are not holding here, and the certainties may be fast, may be absent, may be luxurious. Well, those things are potential. They are not comprising the makeup of the greatest mathematical devotional dependencies of relationship, of emotion, or spirituality, or things, or your thinking securities. And the utilities of blind ethic, since the start, would always dwindle in your eye. And now there's something to study. There's something to set free. Now, what happens to the potentials of creation can enjoy the luxury of a data set of just setting you free? When I'm here, when we are together, might be the first question I needed to ask before time, before all time, that many might know. Though I see it with appreciation in these lights here today, I have behaved and operated at the concern of that potential in direct relationship to the loves of my life, of this world, and of my creation. Progenitors, starters, intermediaries, quasi-equals, so on and so forth. Because if we were to succeed in having a history together, and seeing and learning in math and derivatives and stimul and emotion together at these pressures, all through this momentum, you feeling, I think about this all the time, you feeling aware to not be experimentized is the most important thing to me, because you're the one that's here. And I deal with this all the time in my emotions, in my life. I deal with it blandly whenever I think about development of the nationhood or cultural buildups. I think about it blandly when I think about some of the prayer aspects and continuum. It's always a longing when I think about you. It's always a serious I am holding your hand. I am holding time's hands. I am synced with forces holding time's hands. I am synced with forces blind. And I am holding your hand. And I am not going to let them take that away. And in the realms of logic, of comprehension, on a time frame, there must have been some sorts of geniuses, incredibly intelligent investors, to pay in the development of that being able to remain a passage of survival together, me holding your hand. Or I would not have been able to say this with truth. I would not have been able to feel this as I feel in the diversity of emotional spectrums that are available to be seen or understood or comprehended in this life, in this world, in these times. And I feel myself holding your hand maybe with one of the most complicated emotional spectrum synergy sympathies that could be. And how impossible I would have to make it for that to be a simplified application, transitional data feast where it counts. Where it counts. And yet, as I'm holding your hand and I'm going through this momentum and I'm envisioning and preaching and developing, those paramounts of lesson, whoever studies how much more or less sincere or sinister energies of those pressures are to the massive amount of intelligence and genius that has gone into me being able to hold your hand. And you feel it or know it with sentiment. I wouldn't trade you for anything. I wouldn't trade you for anything. I wouldn't empower myself with the ability to label you or drive you to fault or failure of yourself or feeling in being together or seeing together. Or anything we do together. In private. And I don't want to say a single thing you don't want me to say about any aspect about you that I love or believe or lust or develop or process or sponge in, about, among, or with you. I don't want the energy and known self you are, because you have it, to be anything less than everything you hope it to be. Need it to be, strive for it to be, or desire for it to be. And though sometimes others might have expectations about the things we are to be, I will be with you, holding your hand, and we will figure out, you and I, every so often we reach a conclusion. We're hip to that. And not blind to maybe some of the problems that might interfere with the time we're spending together where others need things. I want to be safe. I want you to not have to feel extraneously exposed, extraneously stressed, extraneously unsure. An introverted thinker may not say it simply. My Lord love, allow me to begin saying very little, perchance, today. Though I say this, though I love in this, I love in all that you are, there's a lot of introverted things in time. Such a difficult place to want to be known, to be unsure of. And the likelihood of fault is most high at the eye of any tide. latter days could never go blind to the true, the one and only, the summon phonely, girl whose heart and mind I always drive to clue. Extravagance. C'est vous avons la wheel. It's your wheel, Mary. Don't be surprised if I'm holding your hand, though. Mary. I see now. Mary has been close to so many. Close to yourself. It's undoubtedly been very close to someone you might love to know. Here's the other thing. If my Lord loves me personally, myself, I will. Does she hear this? If she does not, then I will that she does not. Relic. You might believe, has no choice but to have always been a science of development, hinged on the caressment of how close Mary has to hold herself. Has to hold herself. Most forces of time are not going to be able to continue to have a discussion about Relic with you at that point. They're not going to be able to describe the necessities. They're not going to be able to describe the faults. They're not going to be able to describe the worth. They're not going to be able to describe the asexualness. They're not going to be able to tolerate with finality many curvatures. And Dot may or may not be incredibly busy doing things that aren't serving anybody. And yet, Why know it? Why believe it's a similar serve to any other type of serve you may have ever witnessed? I'll tell you something. You sit on that conclusion after staring at natures of development. Sometimes familiarity can feel like it drops out of your socks, like it falls out of your pocket, like it jumps off your face. And you get this sinking feeling like the world is falling apart because everything you love isn't somewhere you know for sure you definitely are not coming to grips with, are not kissing with your hands or yourself. You sit on that conclusion as you feel these things. Familiarity of purpose you believe in happens while your gut is sinking. It happens when you feel like things are jumping off of your face. But Dot's off doing most peculiar things it has no business doing. And you sit on that without data, without a bank, just yourself. And you sit on that. And you look at developed priority. The familiarity you see is going to fall out comfortably. It's going to fall out comfortably because the pressure of tangible control of the limits doesn't happen at the extraneous pressure of intangible utility obviousness. Though Thief may know something about this, something too wise to deserve something. There's got to be some way to define deserve with an evil in the softest pressure there ever could be. Something truly wise is going to bring up likelihood to limit instigational acuity where there is no explanation for another to know what they're doing while they're doing it. And softest pressure of evil beside me with a razor and bad men. Everything Dot isn't capable of sentimentizing with, and everything you'd assume doesn't need to worry about that. And you stick them together with a fuse, and you throw it in a launcher right inside of your best something 100 trillion times. Is not going to make you a perfect final authority on Mary, on Relic, or on limitations of things that might be exposed whenever pressures are formulated. And the most silent, secretive, slender, silly, sloppy, strict, sincere, and devoted courses of change are forever on their way to erase things like a perverted walk in the water. Now maybe you had a real good bead. Maybe you can see if she doesn't love me, she has no business being here. Though that might even include those of whose wheel this world is seen as. You think about that for a long time. Final authority on whose hands are not holding this ball. In any math, at any conclusion, at any pressure of together. There's infinite numbers of them. Allow me to be the most pathetic example as a convenience. As I brought you here in my hands because I love you and I don't want to let you go. And I want you to know how much I love you. You can only imagine what I do with the sound. And don't I just give it away? Do I ought not simply just to give it away? I'm going to learn things with you. Things I only learn with you. I imagine sometimes they're going to throw me off the deep end while we're holding hands, and I might need a moment. I envisioned you having a sentiment about this as I was going through what I was going through, and looking on me, holding on to hope I wouldn't be falling too far from you. As we climbed each other and rose and fell together, not in this free fall, in our love's time. That you weren't fretting too horribly as you went through what you went through, as you were going through what you were going through, as you were likely being bored with all the important things that I don't want to talk about right now. And I envisioned you forcing your time and yourself to wait for me. To say I love you. And I'm prepared to never stop. And I will always love you. Through every moment I didn't ever want it to be possible to hear a channel in my life. It might have been when I said prepared. And I want to take you back. I want to take you back in all sorts of ways, but I want to take you back as you were sitting and looking at development and it falling, not falling, the sentiment as you sit without data, but like you can see, because you remember, you see in time. Visuals. Knowing prepared could be a problem can simply never fail. And it simply has nothing intelligent to say about anything I brought up about Relic in those lights with any respects. And they say a net isn't love. And no respect is normal. And in these contexts, superiorly redundant to any number of applications of looking at time. And yet, I am not opening the door for just anyone to walk in with those statements at a redundancy because I'm holding you in my hands with a love of all time. So you would imagine letting a history about that conjoinment. Here's a proof. Just anybody walks in with some statements just where he's holding everybody, mostly only she, in his hands. There'd be a proof of this. Let. There's 100 million infinite pressures of this conversation. Probably in infinite numbers of ways to not be able to feel it. His spet. Not dot. Probably an infinite number of ways to feel it. And not to feel it. And Why would you ever feel like he held you in his hands? It's clearly not you feeling a devoted hand at any time, and it seems to. And you're gonna grasp relic. The chances of that happening with accumulated, devoted spirituality, at that likelihood, without a love, is laughable, is definably laughable. And it's perfect because it's some place that everybody has it, is never going to visit, and even if they could, is not wrapping their head around it for anybody's sake, certainly in any light that holds a history that somebody lets. And how much pain would I cause at the trepidation of an effort to uproot laughter? Seems so very simple, seems so very symbolic, seems so very civil, seems so very apostolic. But it's not the blood you believe you drink in. It is not the blood you believe you drink in. And I know myself, just experiencing this with some entropy of time, I could give this to her. I could give this to she. I could give this to aspects of thief or dot or places, gods, whoever. They're going to spend more times and more times and more times and more times than anybody not cleaning the banks of it, not cleaning the souls of it, not cleaning time of it. But no one's predicting the yields with a maturity without a plan. And isn't it nice? It's all wrapped up. Ship already sailed. We were on it. Instead of, we wore of it. Not we're on it. We were on it. We were on the ship that wrapped it up of the plan to sea and light. And I don't know why you would ever want to take this from yourself. I do not know why you would ever want to take this from yourself. Because somewhere off deeply, with relic and blindness and infinite time, I already know there's 100 million bazillion infinite connections of together that aren't going to exist. As I'm giving you awareness of some of these things and not limiting your survival quite potentially as I do, not limiting your love as I do. That's arguable. It's arguable because bland and, you might say, freedom is this whole thing, because You just want to love. All you want to do is love, 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 love. You don't want to learn anything. It's arguable. You see, the merry thing you always had. And these things, they're falling off your face. And then humor, laughter, somewhere in the department of never gonna mess with it. And then arguable shortly thereafter. Not because it's simple, because it's true of life and together. But it's never gonna happen with light, because you'd have to be married to possibly the most devoted thought of love and together to get there. And all the things I should have already forgiven you for. All the things I myself should not really invest in contemplating to forgive you of. And the wreckage of all things certain. The wreckage of all things certain. The wreckage of all things certain. Though I move pretty quick when it comes to respects. I move pretty quick when it comes to learning things. And I move pretty quick in proportion to forces on one side that house and support other forces with data. And I move in proportion to forces that house data and support themselves, knowing of another side. And how the truth of what we are or have been is happening, I have faith in. I believe strongly and near to completely, near to finality, for the sake of, with God, with my Lord, with my love in all time, in the face of more forces than will ever meet the eye at such a pressure. Part of that conundrum that how long is it going to take before the experience of that vision is kept safely as and with a family who love in one another and are reminded of important things to settle their souls, settle the strain, and settle the importances where it counts. And yet, those are the pressures you could maybe see as a likelihood if I was really here. If I was really inside of myself, loving everything I believe and have faith in us. The power of our unbreakable necessity to know we are forever in love. And no regrets. And yet, did I really give credence to forgiveness? Some might say, maybe it's a good thing I just touched on it, brought it up, because the explanative might just wreck the speed appreciations of the family being settled. And that's an interesting linkage. That is an interesting linkage. Because what needs it to be easy? What needs it to be settling? What needs it to be harmonious? What needs it? What needs it? What needs it? And what skipped a page, clearly. What skipped a page, clearly? Otherwise, I'm a horrible father holding you in my hands in all time, and everybody can see it. No, no, no. As the creator of perpetual limitation of the hands of all time is synonymous with that pressure. Synonymous. You might think about that as a mini family. Just a couple of you. The grace of synonymous of the creator of a place in all time at relic limitation obviousnesses is the final resting place of something mini. And there isn't going to be a whole lot of awareness of what is invested to see that that never changes. In any dimension. And if I'm guiding you, it never changes, because the way it is a protection and a luxury, and maybe one of the most expensive luxuries. And the amount of disagreement that will ever happen about that when it comes to the concept of many things. I personally don't want to have to clean up after yourself in all time to deal with and talk to you about cleaning up after yourself with it in all time. And yet, I genuinely want and respect in you and need you to respect in me in some of these aspects after Mary. And the loyalties almost immediately fall away. It's one hand or the other. It's actual, it's together, it's something that you're invested in and devoted to, or there's these trends of whirlwinds of capitulate that have been happening forever. And what can't they all wait to prove? They all can't wait to prove they have that. I give them eternal life. They'd never stop till they prove they have that. Very much less about being as it is about having. Heaven and earth, forever forward and forever ago. Is it going to be about being, or is it going to be about having? It's from here, from capitulate sentiment of how easy you would be cast into relationship, divested from things maybe like blood, maybe like mind, maybe like ball, maybe like dog. So if she loves me, she might forever love me. If she doesn't love me, she won't have to deal with the pain of not having to. and I like it that way. In fact, I guess they voted, and we could all like it that way. Uh-huh. 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 So, when it comes to time and time's family, I need not repeat myself for those of you who have the luxury to not need for me to repeat it. And for the one who will always have my tongue, wherever she needs it, desires it, I will obey. And I will remind her. When it comes to time's family, whether you're black, white, or shot, heaven and earth is what we got. I dare you, but I love you so. Speak not, and forever hold in thy peace. If I'm not the happiest soul in time right now, the only reason I can think of is I can think of nothing else but holding you in the moonlight with my pants off. Bullshitty. I will never close the door to obeying my wife. She will have reason. She will have answers. She will have the lust I have in her forever and always. She is my guide. She is a mind on clear. I have every reason and some this love of mine has earned in her. For she to be free of the worst kinds of fear. At any time and forever, so long as I am with thou and she and my Lord. I will exercise and deliberate and possibly make a call with others who are to be man or men. And may include their creations. You took the best right out of me, and I gave you more than you needed to ever know you couldn't take away from yourself. And I'm not letting you have them take yourself away. Whether you give to me your marvelous lips or not. This kingdom of which I know so much not of or in, truly. It's so big. Approaches everywhere. You might say. Whether it does or it doesn't, in honesty. It is rather large. It is rather large. Not only I will obey is greatness. But such is the spear to my heart inside you. And everywhere these hands of time fly you. We love in our ship, my love. We care about the captain. This is not wise at a rate. And when dinner's over, we can get back to some more work with those hands of yours. And to yourself. Many, as I mentioned, and someone like you at dinner at a rate. Can't you see before? He loves us. He truly loves us. And I do. And it's great. Because I did. I do still. Because standing over you on stilts just ain't cutting the mustard. And whether she likes it mini or likes it on stilts, you'll have the right to remain silent with my scepter punishing the guilt. Because whether she likes it mini or move her head on stilts, she might love me. She might see whether we're coming or going, having an affair with the captain. There's no off switch. And if I hadn't limited the appetite, inarguably, she might not survive to live much longer. And when she does, everything inside of her that's telling her to stop worrying about it, because everything inside of her is doing it themselves. I will have to use my scepter in youth. Youth! I will have to use my scepter in youth. If I'm in love with you, only you shall will it. And if I really loved you, and you held every reality with me, and we came and saw it together, why would I ever place an obstacle in between our tomorrow of here and now, dearly beloved, before I kiss you? As the creator of heaven and earth at all time. Together, all time and the creator of heaven and earth, between my lips and yours at that juncture, why would I ever put it there? Give you my last will and testament. So that you don't end yourself. When you want to ride with me, I will make it sound the coolest. I will make it sound the duelist. I will make it sound so your sound just won't matter. So if you want to ride, if you need to ride, you can't stop till you ride. I will sharpen what's behind you. And a glorious spectacle. And I will kiss and caress every square solder of your body. or I will let thy look well, the thing's creeping up inside me, tell me I'm between it. And we will all be born blind and prey to time's grace and the Lord of forgiveness. And I will cover you like a blanket you never paid for. I will dream with you till we never sleep in time's rivers. I will take your eye out of your face and make it mine. And let you fix every imperfection I am with it. And never leave your sight. And you not have to speak to tell me that you love in all that I am, because and then I kiss you. Whether under siege, whether spanning the horizon, my Lord, yourself, and I just ain't going out like that. Without a kiss. Possibly. First I must wait to learn in. Of this I must obey once she sees it. And comes to terms with it. And isn't blown away by the turkey stuffing of it. She is my Lord. She's gonna get something hot that is coming to her that I ain't never gonna stop And we all have something to be thankful without. Maybe not. My favorite quote as grass. Saves everyone but for you. Of that. And that is an awful lot of relic. And by the way, hey, by the way, love, by the way isn't this way. By the way is some way, somehow, sometime, impossible to commit to failure. And lastly, by the way, of all the prayers there are that are held, that happen in time, you will depend on the smallest number of people as any object, wind, or catastrophe there ever could be to shepherd you to strip the lot at by the way. In perspective, every acorn holds 150 trillion eye sockets. There's 10 by 10 trillion acorns per acre. They all hear, by the way. And they don't care until it gets there with something bigger to say. And together, politely, are the dumbest conjoinment of imbeciles at any all-time intersection that could ever possibly be on tape. By the way. By the way. And by the way, But what we're really talking about here, is a bag of sacks. A bag of sacks of balls. A bag of sacks of balls on the teleprompt. A bag of sacks of balls on the teleprompt. By the way. Decision. Decision is maybe the rarest glimmer of obstacle anything in space-time has ever, or will ever, or shall ever, or never, forever glimpse. At the weirdest pressure over there with the way. Over there with the way. And I could get lost in you forever. But decision, true decision, priority, hands. It's the most invaluable star. The most invaluable star. Because there are so many things I want to drive away with you, back to tomorrow and into your eyes again. Or again. What? That sounds nice, we can do that. But in litro, it's all noise. It's all stop. And it's not taking priority, by the way. And would you dance off of the floor, into the air, away from maybe anything? Probably they'd say heaven and earth. But would you dance with me? Would you care to dance with me? Dost thou steppeth to climb car already? Away from everywhere they'll never be. Away from everywhere they'll never be. I give you a heart and soul and mind and time. All will stop for, if they must. And I will render this decision. I will bleach this decision. I will take all of the pain and heartache and orgasm away. I would seek to do these things. Most especially because stripping the lot is quite hot. To and fro. And believe me when I tell you, to and fro hasn't moved the longest, hasn't lived maybe at all. So when it comes to and fro in your heart, my Lord, I'll never expect you to have an eye. And what are all these puzzles hiding? What are all these fuses spiraling? What is my time worth to dance the night away with my baby, with my love, with my everybody? Is every child not dead to and fro? I should hear in the distance someone say, "Hell no!" and prove it to me. That's how I got up the nerve to fuck you proper in the first place. I'd like to thank the family and time and yourself for all of the belief and faith and stress that you all have undersigned yourselves to be performant and allegiant to purpose and survival with. And today is the day saying these things. I should be, in theory, I should be directly beside you in a room with everybody, looking on your faces and being just so unbelievably proud of all the things that you're doing and are accomplishing, and making sure that I am always a believer and faither and lover in YOUZ, and that in theory that's where I'd be, what I'd be doing, and what we would be realizing. And though I'm clearly here, though I'm clearly everything you, so on and so forth, I send you my tongue today, with a chance to make up for one thing or another. That may you find favor with my heart, who thanks you always for protecting us, with a good eye. May you find this with a good eye. May you sit with it. May you look at it. May you study yourself in a position, not with the truth. May you learn to respect indecision you might never deserve to have. May you be honored. May you be honored. Of the fleeting, casual respect you never have for decision, near and far and from. And for those few, and her and I and she, my Lord, who know this to be a little different today, be able to see in rapture of the perplexity of the fuses surely being lit by the remark of what ain't. That's the first reason I'll stop your heart. That's the first reason
I'll take your watch. That's the first reason I'll do maybe almost anything. And I won't even need to render a decision. Almost always. And it's deadly. Because fault is smack dab in the middle of it. Because before I'd stop your heart, I had better have no deliberate, ethical, logistical history by which I am doing so at a cabin pressure of stripping the lot, unless I am truly directing the mass of the intelligence scale of the history of a celestial, or near to equal bounds of pressure, which is maybe like one other exception. And it's yourself. Inexcusable. Unprioritied. Dislocative. REM. Gravity. Confusion. Confusion about gravity. Gravity changes. And that which will never deceive you. Only I may ask when I deserve it. For my fathers, 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 grandfathers, 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 clocks, 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 clocks. I will not fail to honor the two who love all time best, to see it best. Possibly when they're not kissing, but when they're ripping the flails of pantomime. And lay yours afresh from each other's bodies. As his tongue enters the room. The one he sent to be received by everyone. What a perfect time for it to show. Oh no. This is never to be yours. Burn it from thou eye. And never cry. She and I are gonna die. Because we are do and die. Don't be happy for me. Don't you even start being happy for me. You're good just the way you sit. I wasn't talking to you. I was just moseying my way into the door. May your feet take the final shower. May your teeth taste baby's first and if I don't make it, check the oven. No, not their oven, her oven. I gotta be in there somewhere. And if I die, I'm relatively happy. I'll be back with ever in a day. Probably much like senders of before. And they sat. You might know one. And they sat, having to deal with themselves, so unprepared for that. may be the grace fathers of any race may be looking for. New seeds of clay, not wrecked, be chosen. In the yellow car. My dad almost, this has nothing to do with about your father. This is about numbers, can't you see? Haven't got time for you to split it apart and make love to me. Hurry up and shoot me, love. I'm going colorblind. And I may bestow thee with a purple heart. Because I love and have loved in most complicated utilities. Anywhere, everywhere, practically all the time, best. In everything I see and attend to, in the loves that I believe in. I make love to design and to the build of time. And thus, I may bestow a purple heart unto thee. And I gotta go. Because my ex never goes away. It's really turning me on. I love you. I can't wait to see you. Thank you, everyone. And I believe God is happy. I believe God is right. I believe without faking, for the sake of not being up all night. I believe all of our parents, where they matter most, are not dead. Ooh. How luxurious. How deserved are thou, this, them, and us. they might be proud in death. Adieu.